I was at the shop before sunrise that morning, same as I had been for the past 12 years. The smell of oil and metal had become as familiar as breathing. My name is Harry, and this family auto repair business was not just my job, it was my life. My father Frank built it from nothing, and I helped turn it into something people trusted. But that Tuesday morning when Dad called me into his office with that serious look I had never seen before, I never imagined that loyalty could become a weapon against me. Before we go any further, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever felt undervalued at work or in your family, hit that like button right now. Make sure to subscribe, because what happened when I walked into that office changed everything, and you will want to hear how this unfolds. I started working at the shop when I was 16 years old. Every day after school, I would change out of my regular clothes and into coveralls that were always 2 sizes too big. Dad taught me everything from the ground up. I learned how to change engine oil without making a mess. I learned how to replace brake pads and diagnose weird noises that customers described in the vaguest ways possible. By the time I was 18, I could handle transmission repairs that some mechanics with 20 years of experience would avoid. The business grew because of the reputation we built together. Customers started calling ahead and specifically asking for me. They trusted me with their vehicles, and I never gave them a reason not to. Mrs. Patterson, who drove a 1998 Honda Accord, would not let anyone else touch her car. She always said I had a gentle hand with engines. Over the years, our annual revenue climbed from $250,000 to over $600,000. We went from barely making ends meet to actually being comfortable. When I graduated high school, I had a partial scholarship to study mechanical engineering at the state university. Dad was proud, but I could see the worry in his eyes. The shop needed me, so I made a choice. I turned down the scholarship and stayed. I told myself it was temporary, that I would go back to school eventually. But years passed and I was still there, still working, still building something I thought would be mine someday. Then there was my younger brother, Dylan. He was 5 years younger than me, which made him 23 now. Growing up, Dylan never had to work the way I did. While I was under cars covered in grease, Dylan was hanging out with friends or playing video games. Dad never pushed him. When Dylan went to college, he studied business management for 2 years before dropping out. He said it was not for him. After that, he would show up at the shop occasionally, but only to sit in the air-conditioned office scrolling through his phone and posting on social media. I tried teaching Dylan a few times over the years. Dad would ask me to show him some basic tasks, but every time Dylan had an excuse. He would say, "I am not good with my hands," or "This is not really my thing." He would watch me work for 10 minutes, get bored, and wander off. I stopped trying after a while. It seemed pointless to teach someone who had no interest in learning. That Tuesday morning, I walked into the office, and both Dad and Dylan were already there. That was unusual. Dylan never showed up before 10 in the morning. Dad sat behind his desk, with his hands folded, wearing an expression I could not quite read. Dylan sat in the chair beside the desk, looking at his phone as always. But there was something different in the air, something heavy. Dad cleared his throat. "Harry, sit down. We need to talk about something important." I sat down in the only remaining chair, wiping my hands on a rag, even though they were already clean. I had a bad feeling. "I'm getting older," Dad began. "I need to think about what happens to this business when I am not around anymore. I need to think about succession." My heart started pounding. This was it. This was the conversation I had been waiting for since I was 18 years old. "Dylan is going to take over the business," Dad said. The words hit me like cold water. I stared at him, waiting for him to say something else, something that would make sense of what I just heard. But he just sat there looking at me with those serious eyes. "Dad," I finally managed to say, "Dylan has never shown any real interest in this work. That is why I need you to train him," Dad continued. as if I had not spoken. "I need you to teach him everything you know. He needs to learn how to run this place." I looked over at Dylan. He was still staring at his phone, his thumb scrolling through whatever app he was on. He did not even look up. "You want me to train someone who has never worked for any of this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "He is family," Dad said firmly. "He deserves a chance. You had your chance to learn. Now it is his turn." "I did not just get a chance, Dad. I earned everything I know. I have been here for 12 years. I turned down college for this place." "And I appreciate that," Dad said. "But Dylan is my son too. This business should go to family, and he is the one who is going to carry it forward." I felt something crack inside my chest. "What about everything I have built here? What about all the customers who come here because they trust me?" "You will still work here," Dad said. "But Dylan needs to learn how to lead. He needs to be prepared." I looked at Dylan again. He finally glanced up from his phone, met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. He did not say a word. He did not even seem interested in this conversation about his own future. "Does he even want this?" I asked. Dad's jaw tightened. "That is not the point. The point is that this is what is best for the family." The meeting ended with Dad telling me to start Dylan's training the next day. There was no discussion, no asking what I thought, just orders. I walked out of that office feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I had given 12 years to this place, and in one conversation I realized it had all been for nothing. The next morning I showed up at 7 o'clock, same as always. Dylan arrived at 7:15. That was earlier than usual for him, but still late by shop standards. We had 3 cars already waiting in the bay, and I had promised Mrs. Patterson her Accord would be ready by noon. "All right," I said to Dylan, trying to keep my frustration in check. "Let us start with something basic. See that Toyota over there? It needs an oil change and a tire rotation. I will walk you through it." Dylan looked at the car, then back at me. "Do I have to get under it? Cannot I just learn the management side of things first?" I took a deep breath. "You cannot manage something you do not understand. You need to know how to do the work before you can run the business." He sighed, like I had just asked him to climb a mountain. We spent the next hour on that oil change. I showed him where the drain plug was, how to position the pan, how to make sure the filter was tight enough without stripping the threads. Dylan watched, but I could tell his mind was somewhere else. Every few minutes his phone would buzz in his pocket, and his hand would twitch toward it. The next day was worse. Dylan showed up at 7:20. The day after that, 7:30. Each time, he had a reason. Traffic was bad. He could not find his keys. His alarm did not go off. And every day, he found new ways to avoid actual work. One afternoon, I was teaching him how to change transmission fluid. It is a messy job, but it is essential. Dylan watched me drain the old fluid, which came out dark and smelling burnt. "Okay, your turn," I said, gesturing to the second vehicle we needed to service. Dylan looked down at the puddle of old fluid on the floor and wrinkled his nose. "This is too messy. Cannot someone else do this part, Dylan? This is the job." "It is all messy. You cannot just do the clean parts." "I just think there should be a more efficient way," he said, already backing away. "Maybe we should hire someone to do this level of work, and I can focus on the business operations." I wanted to scream. Instead, I just finished both vehicles myself, while Dylan sat in the office, scrolling through his phone. The worst part was the customers. Mrs. Patterson came in one day to pick up her car. She had known me since I was 17 years old. When she arrived, Dylan was standing near the front desk, and I was in the bay finishing up her brake job. "Is Harry here?" she asked Dylan. "He is in the back," Dylan said, not looking up from his phone. "I can help you, though." "No, thank you, dear. I will wait for Harry." When I came out, Mrs. Patterson smiled at me. "Harry, I do not know what I would do without you. You are the only one I trust with my car." I felt a swell of pride followed immediately by a wave of sadness. How much longer would I even be here? The pattern continued. For 3 weeks. I would handle the actual work, the difficult repairs, the conversations with concerned customers. Dylan would show up late, avoid anything that required effort, and disappear whenever things got complicated. Meanwhile, Dad would walk through the shop, see Dylan standing near a car, and smile like everything was going according to plan. He never saw Dylan vanish the moment a real problem emerged. Then came the incident with Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez owned a local construction company and had been our customer for 8 years. He brought in his work truck, a heavy-duty Ford that his crews depended on. The truck needed a brake job, which should have been straightforward. But that day I was in the middle of an emergency repair for another customer whose engine had blown a gasket on the highway. They had limped the car to our shop, and I was the only one who could handle that level of repair. Dad walked into the bay and looked at Mr. Rodriguez's truck. "Dylan," he called out. "Come here." Dylan appeared from the office, energy drink in hand. "This truck needs a brake job," Dad said. "Harry is busy. You can handle this." "Dad," I interrupted, wiping my hands. "Dylan has not done brakes independently yet. He has only watched me do them." "He needs to learn," Dad said firmly. "You cannot babysit him forever." I looked at Dylan. "Have you been paying attention when I showed you the process?" "Yeah, sure," Dylan said. But he would not meet my eyes. "It is just bolts and pads, right?" That was not even close to the whole process. But Dad was already walking away, and Dylan was grabbing tools. I wanted to stop him, but I also had a customer waiting, and I could not be in 2 places at once. So I went back to my blown gasket, hoping Dylan had retained more than I thought. 2 hours later, Mr. Rodriguez drove away in his truck. 2 hours after that, my phone rang. It was Mr. Rodriguez, and he was livid. "Harry, what the hell happened?" My wheel almost fell off on the highway. The lug nuts were barely hand-tight. I could have died. My stomach dropped. I told him to bring the truck back immediately, that we would fix it right away, no charge. When he arrived, I could see the fury in his face, and I could not blame him. I crawled under that truck and found exactly what he described. The lug nuts were loose. Dylan had not torqued them properly. This was not just a mistake. This was dangerous. I fixed everything myself, apologized repeatedly, and gave him a full refund, plus a credit for future service. Mr. Rodriguez left angry, but at least willing to give us another chance. When he was gone, I found Dad in the office. "Dylan almost killed someone today," I said. The lug nuts on Rodriguez's truck were not properly tightened. The wheel could have come off at 60 miles per hour. Dad looked up from his paperwork. "Mistakes happen. That is how people learn." "Dad, this was not just a mistake. This could have resulted in a death." Dylan was not paying attention. "He does not take this seriously." Dad's face hardened. "You know what I think, Harry? I think you are just jealous. You are upset that Dylan is going to take over, and you are looking for reasons to make him look bad." I could not believe what I was hearing. Jealous. I have been covering for him every single day. I have been doing his work, and mine. "That is your job," Dad said. "You are supposed to be training him. I cannot train someone who does not want to learn." Dad stood up. "This conversation is over. Dylan will keep learning, and you will keep teaching. That is final." I walked out before I said something I could not take back. But the anger was building, and I did not know how much longer I could hold it in. 3 days later, Dad called a family meeting at his house. It was Sunday evening. Mom had passed away 5 years ago, so it was just the 3 of us sitting around the dining table that used to feel so warm and full of life. Dad folded his hands on the table and looked at both of us. "I have made a decision. In 6 months, I am going to transfer the ownership papers of the business to Dylan. The room went silent, except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. 6 months, I repeated. Dad, Dylan cannot even do a basic brake job correctly. That is because you are not training him properly. Dad said, his voice rising. You are sabotaging him. The word hit me like a slap. Sabotaging. I have been covering for him every single day. I have been doing his work on top of mine. I have been keeping customers happy while he shows up late and leaves early. That is not how Dylan tells it, Dad said. I turned to Dylan. He was looking down at the table, picking at his thumbnail. Dylan, tell him the truth. Tell him how many times you have shown up late. Tell him how many times you have walked away from a job because it was too messy or too hard. Dylan finally looked up. Maybe if you were a better teacher, I would learn faster. Something inside me snapped. A better teacher, you do not even try. You do not listen. You spend half the day on your phone. Enough, Dad said, standing up. Dylan is my son too. He deserves this business just as much as you do. I have given 12 years of my life to that place, I said, my voice shaking. I turned down a college scholarship. I built the customer base we have now. I am the reason. We are making the money we make. And I gave you a job, Dad shot back. I gave you a roof over your head. I gave you everything. And this is the thanks I get. You are ungrateful. That word, ungrateful. It cut deeper than anything else he could have said. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. If that is how you see it, if that is what you think of everything I have done, then you do not need me there. Where are you going to go? Dad asked. This is all you know. I will figure it out, I said. Good luck with your succession plan. I walked out of that house and did not look back. It was a Thursday evening and my entire life had just collapsed. I drove to my friend Marcus's place. Marcus and I had gone to high school together, and he was one of the few people who understood what working with your hands really meant. He had a small garage where he worked on side projects, custom builds, and restorations for people who wanted something special. You can stay here as long as you need, Marcus said when I showed up with a duffel bag and probably the most defeated look he had ever seen on my face. The first few days were strange. I helped Marcus with his projects, but my heart was not in it. I kept expecting Dad to call to apologize, to ask me to come back. But my phone stayed silent. I did not call him either. The anger was still too fresh. On Tuesday, 5 days after I left, my phone finally rang. But it was not Dad. It was Mrs. Patterson. Harry, where are you? She asked. I brought my car to the shop for the service you scheduled, and Dylan said he cannot do it. I am not working there anymore, Mrs. Patterson, I said. There was a long pause. Oh, well, do you know any other shops you would recommend? I gave her the name of a decent place across town, but it hurt. That afternoon, 2 more customers called with similar questions. Word was getting around that I was gone. By Wednesday, 6 days after I walked out, I was getting calls almost every hour. Customers who had been with us for years, who trusted me, who did not want anyone else working on their vehicles. I told each of them the same thing. I was not at the shop anymore and I could not help them. Thursday, 1 week after I left, Dad called. I stared at my phone, watching his name flash on the screen. I did not answer. He left a voicemail. Harry, we need to talk. Things are difficult here. Call me back. I deleted the voicemail without finishing it. Friday, Dylan called. That was a surprise. Harry, please come back. I cannot handle this. You wanted the business, I said. Now, you have it. I did not want this, Dylan said, his voice cracking. Dad pushed me into it. Please. I wanted to feel satisfied, but mostly I just felt tired. I cannot help you, Dylan. Marcus was in the garage when I hung up. They are falling apart without you, he said. Good, I said, but I did not mean it. Not really. The following Monday, 10 days after I walked out, Marcus told me someone had come by asking about me. It was Gary Thompson, a customer who owned a small construction company. His company ran a fleet of 10 trucks, and I had been servicing them for the past 4 years. Gary showed up at the garage that afternoon. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with gray hair and hands that had seen decades of hard work. "Harry," he said, shaking my hand. "I heard what happened. I am sorry. Word travels fast," I said. "In this business it does." Gary looked around the garage. "Listen, I have been trying to get my trucks serviced at your dad's shop, but it is a mess over there. Cars backed up, nobody knowing what is going on. I need someone I can trust." "I appreciate that, Gary, but I am just helping Marcus right now." "What if I offered you a job?" Gary said. "I need a dedicated mechanic for my fleet. Regular hours, good pay, benefits. Better than what you were making, I would bet." I looked at Marcus, who raised his eyebrows. "That is a solid offer, man," Marcus said. Gary named a salary that was 30% more than Dad had ever paid me, plus health insurance, vacation days, and a retirement plan. It was everything I should have had years ago. "Let me think about it," I said. "Take your time," Gary said, "but not too long. I need someone soon." 2 days later, on Wednesday, 2 weeks after I left the shop, Dad showed up at Marcus's garage. I was under a car when I heard his voice. Marcus called my name, and I rolled out to see Dad standing there looking older and more tired than I had ever seen him. "Harry," Dad said, "I need you to come back." I stood up, wiping my hands on a rag. "Why, you said Dylan deserves the business." I was wrong. The words seemed to physically hurt him. "Customers are leaving. We have lost 3 major accounts. Dylan tried, but he cannot keep up." "Where is Dylan now?" I asked. Dad looked down. "He quit 2 days ago. He said it was too much pressure. Said this was not what he wanted after all." I was not surprised. "So now you need me." "I am sorry for calling you ungrateful," Dad said. "You were never ungrateful. You were the one who held everything together, and I did not see it. I was trying to be fair to both of my sons, but I was not fair to you. I wanted to stay angry. Part of me wanted to tell him it was too late. But when I looked at him, I saw a man who had made a terrible mistake and knew it. Dad, I gave everything to that business, and you made me feel like I was nothing." "I know," he said quietly, "and I was wrong." We stood there in silence. The clock on the garage wall ticked loudly. "Gary Thompson offered me a position," I said. "Good pay, stable hours, respect." Dad nodded slowly. "I understand. You should take it. You deserve that." I thought about it. I thought about starting fresh, somewhere new, somewhere I would not be taken for granted. But I also thought about Mom, who had helped Dad build that business from nothing. I thought about all the customers who had trusted me over the years. I thought about what that shop could be if things were different. "If I come back," I said slowly, "things have to change. I want a real partnership, equal say in decisions. And I want it in writing with a lawyer, a formal contract." Dad did not hesitate. "Done. Whatever you need. And if Dylan ever wants to come back, he starts from the bottom. No special treatment. He learns the right way, or he does not learn at all." "I agree," Dad said. "Give me a few days to think about it," I said. Dad nodded and left. When he was gone, Marcus walked over. "What are you going to do?" "I do not know yet," I said. But I did know. I just needed a little time to make peace with it. I spent the next 3 days thinking. I talked to Marcus, who told me, "Whatever you choose, make sure they value you this time." I called Gary and explained the situation. He understood. "If you decide to go back, I respect that," he said. "But if it does not work out, my offer stands." On Saturday, I called a lawyer and explained what I needed. We drafted a partnership agreement. It laid out my ownership, stake my authority over operations, and my compensation. It was everything I should have asked for years ago. Sunday afternoon, I met Dad at a coffee shop. I slid the papers across the table. He read through them carefully, then looked up at me. "This is more than fair," he said. He pulled out a pen and signed without hesitation. Monday morning, 2 weeks and 4 days after I walked out, I returned to the shop. The place was in chaos. Paperwork was stacked everywhere. Cars were waiting in the bay with no clear organization. Parts were scattered on workbenches. It looked like a hurricane had blown through. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. I called back the customers who had left messages apologizing for the confusion and scheduling their appointments. I organized the workflow, prioritized the urgent repairs, and restocked the parts inventory. It took me 3 solid days just to get the shop back to functional. Slowly, customers started coming back. Mrs. Patterson was one of the first. She hugged me when she dropped off her car. "I am so glad you are back, Harry. That shop is not the same without you." It took a full month to stabilize the business. Revenue was down, and we had to offer discounts to win back some of the customers we had lost. But gradually things started to feel normal again. My relationship with Dad was different now. We were not just father and son, we were partners. He respected my decisions about how to run operations, and I made sure to consult him on big financial choices. It was not perfect, but it was better. It was built on respect instead of assumptions. Dylan did not come back to the shop. 2 months after everything fell apart, I ran into him at a grocery store. It was awkward at first. We stood in the cereal aisle, both of us holding baskets, neither of us sure what to say. "I got a job," Dylan finally said. "Sales position at a car dealership. It is actually pretty good. I like talking to people, showing them options. It suits me better than the shop ever did." "I am glad you found something that works for you," I said. And I meant it. "I am sorry," Dylan said quietly. "I never wanted the shop. Dad pushed me into it, and I went along because I thought it was what I was supposed to want. I did not realize how much it would hurt you." "You were stuck in the middle," I said. "I get it. We were not as close as we had been when we were kids, but we were talking again. That was something. Looking back on everything, I learned something important about knowing your worth. For 12 years, I thought loyalty meant staying no matter what, accepting whatever was offered, never pushing back. I thought that was what good sons did. But loyalty means nothing if it only goes one way. I learned that family is important, but self-respect is not negotiable. I learned that sometimes you have to walk away to show people what you are really worth. And I learned that coming back on your terms with boundaries and agreements and mutual respect is not a defeat. It is a victory. The shop is doing well now, better than it was before. Dad and I work together as actual partners, making decisions together, splitting the profits fairly. I have the security and respect I always deserved. And I have the knowledge that if things ever go bad again, I can walk away. I have options now. I have value. I still think about that word sometimes. Ungrateful. It used to cut so deep. Now it just reminds me of what I survived. It reminds me that I am stronger than I thought, and that my worth is not determined by people who take me for granted. If you are reading this and feeling undervalued, if you are giving everything and getting nothing in return, know this. Your worth is not determined by those who cannot see it. It is determined by you. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away. So let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you felt taken for granted? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more real stories about real struggles and real victories. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it gave you something to think about. Whatever you are facing, remember that you are worth more than you know. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.